A good evening and welcome to the Fourth Estate. Thank you for watching NTV News. But now we must talk about the people that are covering the news and the stories that are shaping the news. And today we have an elite panel of people to discuss this. We have Kenneth Lukwago Anderson, who produces at Radio 1. And we have Eliasa Mchibi, who is an editor with the Daily Monitor. I want us to discuss the National Unity Platform's selection of candidates, which was a story that dominated much of today. But let us first look at that story and then get back and have the conversation about how the press covered that story, but also what direction that story will take.
Yesterday, a committee that was set up by the Executive Board of the National Unity Platform Party to re-evaluate some of the aspirants for Member of Parliament interviewed the aspirants again. Today, the Executive Board of the party, led by the party President Robert Kyagulanyi, held a meeting in Camera where they came up with a list of people who will represent the party in some of the contested MP seats. In Kawempe South, Uganda Journalists Association President Bashir Kazibwe was handed the flag urging Royce Mboga. While in Kawempe North, Muhammad Sajirinya beat Sulaiman Chidandala to become the party's flag bearer. Machindi West MP Alan Sewanyana also managed to ward off a strong challenge from Farouk Ontege to get the party's flag. In Rubaga North, the area MP Moses Kasibante has lost to represent NUP to KCCA Speaker Abubakar Kawalia. In Machindi Sabagabo Municipality, the area MP Emmanuel Chigozi Sempala also lost to David Selukenya. These and more positions were announced today.
15 constituencies, there is 4 which are still being looked into, where 1 or 2 people have not been vetted and all of that. And
the party has called on people who are not satisfied to petition in 48 hours.
So I'd like to say that those that are dissatisfied have 48 hours within which they can petition, within which they can raise whatever concerns that they might have.
The party also says they will meet dissatisfied party members to mend their relationship.
So our colleagues who are not able to get flags, we intend to invite them as a party and interact with them because they are members of the party. Yes, they did not get flags, but that doesn't mean they cease to be members of the family.
Some of the people that have been given the party flag said the party considered them for various reasons.
I thank Claude for having managed to win this party flag amid this competition from 9 competitors who were also worthy, but maybe chance and my competitiveness and my worthiness helped me to get this party flag.
Being given the NUP flag to represent the people of Kawempe South is another factor that is going to give the party a lot of support, that is going to bring people from all walks of life to support the same cause that we have been advancing all years.
To work with them, we shall work together, we shall fight for the rights of a common man, we shall work.
NUP has been in the spotlight for denying some popular figures party flags, including Joseph Mayanja, also known as Chameleon, Mike Mabike, former presidential candidate Samuel Lubega Mukaku, among others. Juma Kiri.
Thank you so much, Juma Kiria, for that story. Eliasa Mchibi, you've just watched this story. Last week we predicted, you were not here, but you were very engaged in the conversation, that this week would be a pressure cake for the National Unity Platform because they have to disappoint some of their very ardent fans who are also supporters, but also who are members of parliament, who are politicians within the party. Do you think that this disappointment will affect the National Unity Platform's chances? But also, do you think that the coverage of this story was well done?
Thank you, Raymond. Will it affect NUP? I don't think so. Because you see what happens, where NUP is now, FDC was in the previous 2 or 3 elections. What happens is that the candidate those who want to stand on the opposition ticket think is likely to attract most support will always have so many people, office seekers around them. And there will always be a big problem picking from those people who will represent them. Definitely, there are going to be many candidates, intending candidates, who will only have it one way. We must run. And you have a number of those in a number of constituencies. They are going to be in every party. You'll see it in the NRM, There are going to be people who will go into the primary, but they know that even if I lose, I must run. I don't have any other option. And I think now the way it is arranged, our elections are sequenced, makes it even more complicated. Because I think, was it 1996, maybe even 2001, a candidate who missed out on, let's say, being elected to parliament could be elected, could now go and vie for
LC5.
yeah, local council,
Yes.
in local council elections and whatever. Now that doesn't happen anymore, because actually the nominations, it happens in a reversed way, kind of. They nominate for the smallest offices first, and then the president's, the biggest, comes last, which is very strange. Now you have LC3 candidates already nominated. They have a much longer time. Even if the official campaigns have not started, they can now just be moving around telling people, I am a candidate and this is what will happen. They have a much longer time than, let's say, the presidential candidates who will have to cover the entire country. I don't know why that is like that. But going back to NUP, on whether this will affect it, of course, it is going to depend on whether a number of people in any given constituency believe that the candidate who NUP picked was picked fairly. In many cases, I think it is going to be the case, because I think they went for the candidates who are poised to win, who they think stand better chances of winning. The problem will be in those constituencies where the candidates who are overlooked maybe have have more support. So if that is the case, then you're going to have independents who say they are NUP, and maybe because now the candidate, the presidential, potential presidential candidate, who people look at and think he's likely to give President Museveni a run for his money, mostly is Kyagulanyi for the coming election. So you are going to have even those who will go independent in the opposition, making sure that they actually seem to campaign for Kyagulanyi, because disassociating themselves from him may actually affect them badly. But that said, there are going to be very, very fierce battles. If you just, for instance, take the case of Rubaga North, I've been following the Honorable Kasibante, who was overlooked for the flag. And he has released posters, election posters, and he has inscribed there, Rubaga North is not for sale. He accuses KCCA Speaker Kawalia of having too much money. And he goes around telling voters this money actually comes from the NRM. You know that Kawalia allied with NRM to win
the speakership.
But
isn't it fair, this election is really going to be about money, guns, and your ability to impress it upon the population? Isn't it fair that money becomes a topic of conversation in an electoral contest like that?
Yeah, definitely. No one will want voters to be bought like somebody would buy things in the market. But the reality is, if you, I actually interact with a few MPs, even on the opposition side. Somebody has been in parliament and they know that they actually need a lot of money to win. In the past, it used to be that those MPs would be maybe in away from Kampala, that in Kampala it was enough for one to be believed to have, to be opposed to the establishment for them to win. Not anymore. Actually, I was talking to one prospective candidate who is an incumbent, and he was telling me he estimates that he will need between 800 million and 1 billion shillings. And he says, I'm sure I'll win because I don't think any of my opponents has that money. And then those people who have money, no, you don't waste 1 billion shillings in a place where you are likely to lose it. I think why many opposition candidates don't face a lot of opposition, very strong candidates who have a lot of money within the city and a few areas around it, is because they know, those people who have the money know that you risk too much. You don't go and pour 2 billion shillings. And for instance, if you go back to, let's say, 2001, I was living in Gaba and I saw when Michael Mabika was first elected to be MP, he didn't have anything. He had just come out of school. He was in UID. He had the backing of the late Sebana Chizito, but not in money terms. And we would just go around singing. He faced a lot of money. There was a candidate called Enos Tumusime who had been the MD of Uganda Railways Corporation. And actually it was a subject of ridicule around here that somebody would come with a lot of money, pour it, so he would give the money to people to distribute. And those people who are given the money would go and say, this is on behalf of the Honorable Mabike. And it was the other side. So those things happen. And, but I think now the issue is going to be a lot about money, and whether the NUP will be affected is that, you see, they have, I have seen their impressive lineup of potential candidates from all across the country. I think it becomes very, very important for one to have money. The farther away they move out of this town.
Yes. Kenneth, last week you predicted there'd be a pressure cake. You mostly got it right on the candidates that have finally made it. The impression, though, about the NUP being a party that is within the urban areas, and particularly within the city center where opposition has strength, someone would say even in the coverage of the story, no one is asking how come none of these constituencies was outside of say, Buganda region or outside of an urban area. There's no rural constituency where NUP said our executive committee has to sit again and reevaluate who is going to become the candidate. Is this an indication of where the NUP is likely to get its most support in the coming election?
Well, even some opinion polls that have been made have indicated that support of Robert Kyagulanyi, by that time when the opinion poll was made, NUP was not in existence. But it's very difficult to differentiate between NUP and Robert Kyagulanyi because of the leadership he provides there. It was very clear from the opinion polls that came out that his support base is basically mainly in urban areas. Even if you move away from Kampala, you see the other places that he has support are basically urban centers. Probably like areas said, it's almost like how FDC started. The opposition has always had their strong bases in the urban areas. So that basically is just a replica of what happened during that time. However, what is different this time, I might say, is probably the caliber of the people that have stepped forward. Mainly you will see they are young people, probably defining the leadership of Robert Kyagulanyi as a young person. You see most of the people that are actually getting these tickets are actually young people. And of course we see a lot of interest, mainly here in the urban centers, for a party that has been in place for maybe 3 or 4 months, to attract a number of people aspiring to represent his flag is something that you would actually give them credit for. So you continuously see that so many people want to align with the party, and like Arias has said, even those that are aspiring as independents would still seek the support of Robert Kyagulanyi because of the spark that he provides at the moment on the political scene. The other question you ask, why most are not rural constituencies. Of course, we know the limitations that we have now, not only because of COVID-19, but even politically, even before COVID-19 came. It's always not easy for the opposition to mobilize, especially to go in up-country places and try to come up with candidates and so forth. But I've seen they have tried to do something in northern Uganda and in West Nile, and I think it's because of the deputy of Honorable Chagulanyi, who I think has camped in that region for 3 consecutive weeks now, trying to open up offices and also recruit membership. So I have seen a number of candidates in the north, probably more than even the Democratic Party, if you look at the constituencies and the number of people who have aspired to contest there. And the same in the West Nile region. And we were told this week they will be probably moving to the Lango sub-region. But also, the way in which NUP has handled its candidate selection or identification process, it seems they chose to start with areas where there is too much interest as they move further to other areas, because you will see they started by releasing people in a list for people here in Uganda. Then again they re-evaluated, and then we saw people from the west. I think then they will again do a re-evaluation and move on further like that. So there's a lot that could come on, could come in the near future, and probably by nomination time we'll really see the real shape of the party in terms of representation in the parliamentary elections.
Yes, sir. Before we get into the break, I just wanted to ask, the democratic credentials of the NUP were questioned a lot in the press this week. And many sources were questioning how does a party arrive at, say, who the members that represent it are. Do you think that this was a democratic process? And do you think that this process produced the candidates that most likely would have been voted had there been a delegates conference?
It's difficult to predict whether that is what happened, but I think the important thing is the objective situation on the ground needs to be looked at. And NUP cannot have had the resources, that is money and also time, maybe to do it differently. But if you just walk away from NUP a bit and look at the Democratic Party, the oldest political party in this country, they don't hold primaries themselves. And actually the candidates are determined by the executive committee according to their constitution. So people apply, these people can have, the people at the headquarters can have consultations with people maybe from the constituency and whatever, and they will say this is the candidate. That is why maybe you might have had those days when there were still those squabbles in DP, the party president Norbert Mao warning some people like Namboze, like whatever, that they wouldn't get the card. That if you have not behaved well and whatever, it's not like NRM, for instance, where they will say we will just do adult suffrage, and that one with the highest number of votes, I mean with all its problems, it can be debated whether that is the most democratic, that at least we know. If we could get only the NRM people in a particular constituency to pick a candidate, that's very difficult, of course, to ask of NUP, even of FDC, because you will have had until now, even those political parties that have representation in parliament have not been funded, I think the whole of this year or something like that. But the NRM has had money to buy its headquarters, to buy bicycles per village. They have talked about motorcycles, even double cabins for districts. So there is a huge difference between what a party like NUP can do practically and what, let's say, the ruling state party can do. I'm adding state party, not actually to try and differentiate it from the rest. So I think we need to be fair as we say that. Whether they arrived at the candidates that should actually have been the ones to be picked, that remains to be seen, because those are human processes. And even if they say that we sent, even if they have sent professors who are great at sampling to my county in Butambala, which stretches, I don't know, over 55 villages, and you are looking to see which candidate is most likely to win, I think the margin of error is very big. There's a good chance that across the country you are going to get it wrong in very many places.
All right. Kenneth, do you think that this process was democratic?
Well, to be able to tell whether it was democratic or not, I think someone also needs to understand or take into account what their constitution says and the circumstances that we are operating in, like areas as hinted. First of all, I understood that in areas where there were so many candidates, they would first hold a meeting with the candidates and try to encourage them to cede for the other who is actually perceived to be stronger. I think that is democratic in its sense, because every party is involved and there is participatory democracy in that sense. Where it would fail, they would then go to the vetting process, where they see whether you understand the roles of an MP, your leadership track record, and generally how you perceive the leadership and the politics in this country. So I looked at it as a new process. While the DP might be doing something like that, there has not been so much interest in it like we have seen in NUP. And where I saw some great improvement in terms of actually ensuring that there is justice and lenience on all those participating is the fact that the team that did the vetting in the first place was not the one that did the re-evaluation. It was completely a new team that was set up to look at the grievances that had come from the other side, from the petitioners. And so generally, I look at it as a process that tried to promote an internal democratic process, and also at the same time ensure that there is cohesion, much as there was some element of a competition. But also, I think their processes also are in tandem with the Political Parties and Other Organizations Act, especially the regulations which were tabled by the Minister, Ephraim Kamuntu, before the party nominations began, because there were different options a political party could use to actually arrive at a candidate, and vetting was one of them.
All right, thank you so much. We're going to take a very short break, but when we return, we'll discuss the Democratic Party. We'll also discuss Kutesa and Museveni in Zimbabwe. Thank you so much for staying with the Fourth Estate. Now, many people have said a wrong has been righted this week when Shatsi Kutesa was defeated by Sodo Kaguta. Many people had anticipated that the race that happened between Kaguta and Kutesa years back would come back to the forefront in this Zimbabwe election. Let's look at the story that happened there, but particularly the headline that the Monitor covered and carried, which was that Kaguta beats Kutesa. But let's first look at the story from Zimbabwe, and then we discuss it.
After a heated race for the NRM flag bearer from Aogola North, Godfrey Aine Kaguta, Sodo, was declared winner. Sodo defeated Shatsi Musherure and Salim Chiseka.
People of Aogola decided to vote me because they see potential in me.
And indeed, I do have concerns on 6 villages today that were not given a result. So we still have work to do, and I have presented my petition to Dr. Tango Doi's office.
In the aftermath of the contest, political analysts have weighed in on the election.
It was a race between, in my opinion, the two most influential families in the politics of this nation. Of course, we know the history of Sam Kutesa and Museveni.
At this time, they longed for an alternative, and now it emerged, or it was in the likes of Honorable Aine Kaguta Sodo.
Almost every police boss was in Zimbabwe following the violence exhibited in the previous attempt. The analysts believe it was necessary to have a heavy security presence.
Yes, yesterday I think it was a peaceful process, but we know what happened at the beginning, and the police could not allow that to happen. And also to stop the divide. We know very well that so many people are not happy with the results.
The personality of the chairman of the NRM Electoral Commission and his role in these hotly contested primaries was also of interest to the analysts.
Of course, reading from the body language, he was like kind of reacting to some underground threats and manifestations of being removed from office if he couldn't handle the Zimbabwe issue professionally and rightly.
It's not yet over for Shetsi until the NRM Electoral Commission decides on her petition. Ali Mivule.
Thank you so much for that story, Ali Mivule. And that's where we want to pick the conversation. Eriasa, starting with you. You wrote a very interesting headline, Kaguta beats Kutesa. And there were many inferences that could be drawn. I mean, 40 years ago, Kutesa beat Kaguta in a landslide victory for a member of parliament seat. 40 years later, Kaguta, though not Museveni, beats Kutesa, though not Sam Kutesa. What was the thinking behind the cheeky headline? And it came off cheeky.
Did the headline come off cheeky?
It came off cheeky because everyone was asking which Kaguta and which Kutesa is this?
What kind of beating?
What is Sodo's surname?
Kaguta, without a doubt. Kaguta, without a doubt.
Because the issue is, and Shatis, I think she's Kutesa also.
Yes, she is Kutesa.
And actually, in our style, we use surnames. So even if you just wanted to stick to the level of facts, you are talking about a Kaguta who wins in Zimbabwe. And the story does fit, I mean, all the standards of prominence if you are talking about the president's brother beating the influential foreign affairs minister's daughter. And everything that had happened. You know about the assemblage of, I don't know how many guns were in Zimbabwe on election night.
There were 8 DPCs with the deputy IGP together in Zimbabwe.
I don't know how many men and women of the police and other forces.
The bomb squad was also there.
The election had been postponed. There had been people cut up and everything. So the story was prominent, and those were the key players. I think just at that level, you'll say, okay, everything was written as it should be. You just wanted me to talk about the headline?
No, the other thing I want to talk about is what's exactly at stake in Zimbabwe. It doesn't look like it's a regular NRM primary race. It looks as though it's a bigger race for the control of the NRM, or the heart and soul of the NRM, because Zimbabwe itself returns almost 99% of its votes for the NRM. It looked like there was an actual fight between, and the analyst said, 2 of the most influential families in Uganda's political history. Not forgetting that Museveni's son-in-law, Museveni's son, is married to Kutesa's daughter.
Kutesa's daughter, who is is it twin sister?
Yes.
Of the lady in the race?
Yes, so what more other than what we saw was at stake in Zimbabwe?
So the issue, I think the Kutesa family will feel
betrayed.
You're saying betrayed, maybe something different, but they must have a grudge. They must have been left with a bitter taste in the mouth that Sam Kutesa, the father, has represented that constituency for a very long time, and it is something with which we had come to identify with him. As he said many months ago, was it a year ago, when he said, I want to run again, he did introduce his daughter, and he said, I want her to take this forward. To some people who are against the politics of dynasties, there would be every motivation to stop that from happening. But you would expect it from very many sources, but not the Kaguta family. So I mean, it is very interesting that it is someone from the Kaguta family who goes and says this will not happen, and he seems to be on course to stop it. So what is at stake? I don't know. I don't know whether in the estimation of some people, because it can't be that those 2 people who are running to go to parliament, there can be people like me who people will say, I am attracted to the salary that MPs get paid. I don't think those people are even interested. or they are so bothered about how much money they'll get paid, maybe to be called honorable for purposes of status and recognition. But you'd think, because I have seen so many people, people from Ankole, I know a few friends from Kiruhura district. I think Sam Magara's, the real Sam Magara's daughter is the NRM flag bearer for Katikam South.
Yes.
That is the constituency that was once represented by the Attorney General Chindu Makubuya. There is another one, Michael Katunji, born in Kiruhura, is a Butemba constituency. So they could have gone, maybe Sodo could have thought about another constituency. But why particularly that, and then fight out a long drawn war with Kutesa's daughter, is something that must have a number of things that are beyond the eye. I don't know, because many people will tell you that Museveni's politics has been reinforced a lot by Kutesa. Maybe is deemed to be one of the chief strategists. I don't know whether that is still the case or there is a problem. But also now they have familiar relations, that they are in-laws and this happens. So the country can, I cannot pretend to know or to be able to speculate even accurately about what exactly it is. Did Kutesa, did they suspect Kutesa has presidential ambitions, and therefore if you cut him down to size by showing him that we can come to your own courtyard and do whatever we want, even with an election like that? Because you have seen, for instance, before these primaries, there were NRM SEC elections, and the president has the wherewithal to tell Haji Naduli, for instance, from Luwero, to say, you have been the vice chairperson, NRM, Buganda, but now please step aside. And the old man does step aside. And a number of other people from elsewhere. The president has done that. I don't know if he thought maybe it is important even to stop the bloodletting in Zimbabwe, to say, please, my brother, there are so many other things you can do, leave this constituency. I think if he had done that, and he meant to do that, he would have done it. Why he decided that the people must decide, even under those circumstances, is something that, for which I don't think we can have answers now.
Kenneth, the thing about Zimbabwe is there's a story to read in Museveni's inaction. There are many places where Museveni has swiftly acted and said, step aside. In Zimbabwe, he literally went there and said, I don't want anything to do with Zimbabwe politics. When his own brother was running in a race, a tight race which was perceived to become violent at one point, and now his brother has won against Shatsi Kutesa and ended the Kutesa legacy in Maogola. It would take something extraordinary for Shatsi to run as an independent. Why did the president not act on his own brother in an election like this? When he's acted for the favor of Chigongo, he's acted for the favor of his own minister Chiwanda in Buganda. Why in this case did he say, let it be?
Well, if there was anyone at any moment questioning his democratic credentials, that will be an easy example for him to point out. He says, you see, even in a case where my brother was involved, I let it be. The people are the ones who decided. That would be one. But also, what could be at stake in Zimbabwe is also the politics of land, domination and land politics. A lot is going on in Zimbabwe in terms of people acquiring big portions of land for ranches and so forth. And you see the involvement of most people in that area. They come with a lot of money, with a lot of influence. And we have had people like Theodore Sechikubo talking about the dynamics in that area for a very long time. So I think it's just an opportunity to use the political office to stamp further authority in that particular area and edge out the would-be troublemakers or competitors on the side of Sodo. And I have actually heard people who are saying that he's not originally from there. He's just somebody who probably shifted to that place.
It is actually a matter of fact. Sodo went to Zimbabwe 8 months ago.
So he went there to settle there and probably use this an opportunity to stamp further his authority, because political offices in this country, in Uganda and in Africa generally, it's not just about the role you play as a leader. It also comes with a certain clout. It also comes with the influence that you can have in determining what is transpiring in the particular area where you a leader. So that seems to have been one of the things I would think about the politics of dominance. But also I have had some other people actually say the president generally was not happy with Kutesa actually saying that he would not be running. I mean, when Kutesa does that, historical, he leaves him in the cold, and then people will probably start saying, if your colleagues are leaving like Kutesa, the ones that you came with, why are you still hanging on around? There are people also think like 2001. That. Well, there is a difference between Rugunda and Kutesa and Museveni, given the relations that they have that we have already been talking about here. So there are so many things that need to be looked into. But one, it gives Museveni the democratic credentials. He says, look, my brother was involved. It was a tense situation. I would have probably stopped the election there and decided by myself, but I let it be. So the NRM is democratic, and I'm also not involved in those cheap local politics, like he said.
Yes, very finally on this story, there seems to be a glove-in-hand situation for the NRM in these primaries, particularly in constituencies where the big shots of the NRM come from. You've mentioned Chiruhura. There was a huge fight in Chiruhura before Colonel Fred Mwesije eventually was declared the winner over Kajonje, who claims to have won that election. You have now Zimbabwe, which has also become a matter of facing off with each other. You have areas like Shema and Imbarara. Shema, for example, where Professor Mshemeza ran against Professor Kamuntu. There are those glove-in-hand scenarios where people who act for and work in the favor of the president, without the backing of the president, are unseating NRM historicals. Is this a scenario that the NRM will have to confront and heal from as they get into the election, or it's something that they'll just have to let go?
Well, I think that's a tough one. These guys, some people have waited in the wings for so long. You know, they are waiting for this person to exit, and usually politicians do promise that. I know very many of them, they get elected, maybe when they get the second term, they start saying, maybe I won't come back, and then another person is waiting.
That happened in Bushenyi for Mary Karoro Krut against
yes. And a few other places, even here in Buganda, people I know who had said, I will not run. Then the time comes and they are running. So people run out of patience. And then I think many of these historicals eventually become very entitled. And people get their names to be associated with the places they represent. So they don't feel actually obliged to do a number of things that other MPs do, that other elected leaders do for their people to earn their places. So these guys project huge figures on the national politics, but then on the ground they are very thin. And the people who come from there, I think over time they learn that the people are very aggrieved against these huge national figures, and they know that they are beatable. You can't beat them because they have not done A, they have not done B, and all that. So the moment there are primaries, there's an opportunity like that, because you know, in some constituencies you go, let's say to Nyabushozi, where Colonel Fred Mwesije is running, you know that if I beat him, I am maybe 98% in parliament. It's very unlikely that someone is going to come from NUP or FDC or NT and beat me to this. So it is going to be a very hard fought one for you to get the flag. And then the other big figure who is not on the ground is going to have to fight to use every weapon. I think that is why many times these elections become violent, because this big man eventually realizes I am going, and now he has to try in a rush to do so many things so quickly.
All right, I wanted us to spend the last few minutes, and my producer will help me here, discussing the Democratic Party. So let's first watch the story. The Democratic Party Vice President, Mukasa Mbide, became the flag bearer for the rest in Masaka. And he had a lot to say about people who are discussing the Democratic Party, particularly its influence in Masaka. So let's look at that story, because it ties in also with the NUP story.
That are tarnishing, maligning the otherwise good name of the Democratic Party with the perfidy, mendacity, and absolute ballyhoo. We have them to know the Democratic Party has so much to live for. It must live for us and for those yet unborn. In fact, we shall continue sailing through such waters unconcernedly, and we shall only deposit whatever becomes heavier for us, just like a river in our windings. Can safely say that the door is not locked out for those that may want to refresh their minds for purposes of recognizing the objects for which the DP stands for, and accordingly come and buy on tickets hereof. We are ready. This is not our party. We are members of this party. It remains with or without anyone. Clearly, they are all welcome. For as long as one, they will abide by the provisions, antics, semantics, and all those acts and objects for which the DP Constitution, as a microcosm of rules and regulations of our party, was established in 1954.
Thank you so much for that story. My producer has just given us 2 minutes to be able to discuss this. I don't know if it's enough, but the flamboyant Democratic Party president, Vice President Mukasa Mbide, Democratic Party finds itself in a very, very, very delicate situation now, that they could easily lose Masaka because their incumbent, Mathias Mpuga, is now with NUP. But even then, the Democratic Party just came off a delegates conference where they voted flag bearers, they voted new members of the party, but it seems to be not getting any attention, either in the press or even national political conversation. Kenneth, to start with you, what becomes the fate of the Democratic Party?
Well, Fred Mukasa Mbide, they are almost speaking like he's a leader, Robert Mao. They have a way with words. But for me, the sad thing with the Democratic Party is the fact that every other turn of elections, they have to lose people. And then they will keep on giving hope that they will rise again. But the other round of elections, they keep losing people. And that's a sad story, because a political party must grow in terms of numbers. And if you want to get there, you must be able to have very many numbers in parliament. And I'm thinking probably their numbers in parliament is going to reduce. And talking specifically about Masaka, we saw what happens in the youth elections, if we can use that, and we saw what NUP and the NRM did in Masaka. Basically, you could not see the Democratic Party. But I think probably they need to go back on the drawing board and just think about how they can build a party that takes them forward. And for people like Fred Mukasa Mbide and Norbert Mao, probably they should think about giving space for other new leaders to actually emerge within the political party, because they are too conflicted to actually provide credible leadership for the Democratic Party, going by what people have been saying.
Yes, Amuchibi, very, very finally, what becomes of the Democratic Party in the soft spot that they are in at the moment?
A very difficult question, but just about Mbide, you know that Mbide said he would run for Masaka municipality. That's where Mathias Mpuga represented. Now they have divided the constituency because Masaka has become a city. Is it Nyendo, Mukungwe? That is the constituency again where Mpuga is running and Mbide is running. I'm talking about that because there has been a long-running feud between Mukasa Mbide and group on one side. You can leave Mao aside. Even before Mao came in to lead, Mukasa Mbide from I think they should be 11 days. Even
Actually, I started in Nkobazambogo and just graduated.
even earlier. So these people have issues, and I think between Mpuga now and Imbide, they think each of them is the better, the more refined politician and whatever. And now they have, that is one big election to watch between Mbide and Mpuga. Of course, now the other people have gone to NUP, and there is not very much left of the Democratic Party, because what used to be the Democratic Party and their structures within the central region, in most places, maybe in Masaka where Ambide is, he will try and fight and whatever, but elsewhere it has virtually been extinguished. And maybe now Norbert Mao is trying to resuscitate it a bit. Maybe he may win a few councillor positions and MPs in Gulu and Acholi and whatever. I think it will be much weaker going into this election than it was because of what happened.
Yeah, thank you so much, Eliasa. Thank you so much, Kenneth Anderson. Thank you so much, the people that have been viewing us. This is the Fourth Estate. We're discussing the angles, the stories that have been making the rounds during the week. But we'll be back again next week discussing more of these stories and your big stories. Have yourselves a good evening.